Imagine the quietness of a farmhouse in eastern Jutland in Denmark in the middle of the 19th century. From outside comes birdsong and the lowing of cattle, perhaps the creaking of a passing cart on the nearby road. Somewhere a clock ticks. Occasional voices, not loud, come and go. Next to a window, where the light is good, a young woman has been sitting, spinning wool to make up balls of woolen thread. She has one ball of wool finished on the table, her scissors ready at hand, so that she can snip the thread and make another. But her mind is not on her work. She has been daydreaming. What, or who, has been the subject of her dreams? Today the inside is warmer than the outside, and condensation has formed on the cold window glass. The girl has stretched out her hand and is doing what people have done for as long as mist has formed on windows. She is using her fingertip to make marks in the moisture. She is tracing out sinuous shapes, the shapes of letters. She is writing a name, a man's name, Niels. The name is strongly inscribed. The letter forms are firm, but also insubstantial. Where is the substance? In a dream inscribed on mist, a name written in water. While her right hand writes, her left holds the spindle which winds the thread of love, of happiness, of life itself, waiting to be cut, but also, perhaps, to be woven into something beautiful. The painter Christen Dalsgaard was a native of Jutland, and Jutland was a part of Denmark which was to have great significance in 19th century Danish art. He was the son of a landowner, and was born on the family estate of Krabbesholm, near Skive, in northwestern Jutland, in 1824. Here is a painting by Dalsgaard of the family manor house at Krabbesholm, undated, but probably from the late 1840s or early 1850s. In 1844 he travelled to the Danish capital of Copenhagen, about 300 kilometres by road and steamship, to study at the Royal Fine Arts Academy. At the Academy, Dalsgaard studied under some of the great names of the golden age of Danish painting: Martinus Robier, Johan Ludvig Lund, Christopher Eckersberg. At the time, a debate was developing among Danish artists as to whether inspiration should be sought at home in the landscapes, life and culture of one's own country, or, as was traditional, abroad, above all in Italy, recognized as the wellspring of European art. The art critic and historian Niels Laurits Høyen, who taught at the Royal Academy and at the University of Copenhagen, and was the first salaried professor of art history in Denmark, argued that Scandinavian art should be rooted in the distinctive landscapes, histories, and cultures of the Nordic countries, and urged Danish artists to find their inspiration in scenes of nature, the life of the people, and the relics of their country's history. Høyen's arguments resonated with Christen Dalsgaard, who from his earliest days as an artist had shown his interest in Danish life and culture, painting and drawing traditional farmhouses and rural scenes in his native Jutland, and recording the dress and customs of the people. He was an artist of domestic interests at a time when Danish art, partly as a result of Høyen's influence, was domestic in character and insular in outlook. Dalsgaard, for his part, never left Denmark at all, either in his life or his art. His natural inclination was always towards being a Danish artist of Danish life, representing the ordinary domestic life of farms and rural communities. He was ideally qualified to illustrate the works of the Jutland writer Stine Steensen Blicher, whose poems and short stories played an important part in bringing Jutland rural dialect and culture to a wider Danish public in the 1830s. Dalsgaard was well placed to play a part in the extension of the mid-19th century discovery of Jutland from literature to the visual arts. The fact that he, like Lykke, was a native of Jutland gave his works an authenticity which the painters who followed him, who were from Copenhagen and other parts of Denmark, and who came to Jutland as visitors, tended to lack. There is realism in some of his depictions of the humble living conditions of peasants and fisherfolk, and in his works he presented the darker sides of rural life: isolation, emigration, death and grief. But, like other painters of Jutland themes, his works of art catered to a middle-class market in the more populous and urbanized eastern parts of Denmark, who sought a sentimentalized and idealized vision of traditional rural Jutland life. He often painted interiors, in which the influence of 17th and 18th century Dutch genre art, very popular in Denmark at the time, is very apparent. A favorite theme of his was young women from farms and peasant communities, wearing their traditional, colorful regional styles of clothing, and often preoccupied with the coming of lovers, the coming of letters, and the coming of letters from lovers, writing letters, and reading letters. The young woman in our painting is also preoccupied with letters, but letters of a slightly different type. If we look at this painting, we immediately see a number of familiar Dalsgaard themes: a cottage or farmhouse interior, a window, and a young woman dressed in distinctive regional clothing. The title of the painting tells us she is a peasant girl from Jutland. Dalsgaard was careful over details of dress, and had his own collection of drawings recording the details of regional costume and actual samples of clothing upon which to base his representations. Dalsgaard's general approach to such scenes is also evident: the sense that the viewer has happened upon a passing, intimate moment, with the actors in the scene unconscious of observation, the amassing of small, ordinary details that gain a sense of heightened significance, drawing the viewer in, the presence of narrative, or at least an awareness that the scene we are witnessing forms part of a larger story, taking place beyond the bounds of the picture. That point is very clear in this painting, which contains only one person, but has two protagonists: the girl writing the name, and the unseen other, the lover, whose presence is symbolized by the letters carefully spelling out his name, Niels, on the window. The composition of the painting is straightforward, as Dalsgaard's compositions tend to be. The girl is positioned on the vertical centre line of the canvas, and the horizontal centre line passes through her waist, so that the halfway point of her body is placed at the halfway point of the canvas. The placing and positioning of the figure creates a triangular form that occupies the centre of the canvas, but with that form's tendency towards the static, counterbalanced by the diagonal movement from bottom left to upper right, created by her leaning posture and her outstretched arm, drawing attention towards the focal point of the girl's fingertip, writing on the glass. The overall impression is one of balance, but informality, appropriate to the glimpsing of a brief moment of passing time. The structure of the painting is based on a division of the canvas into horizontal and vertical thirds. The frame of the window almost exactly fits into a rectangle in the top right corner, defined by the lines of division into thirds, with the line of the girl's outstretched arm continuing the bottom line. The far edge of the table upon which the girl is sitting is 1/3 of the canvas height from the bottom, just as the lower edge of the window, into which the girl is stretching, is 1/3 of the canvas height from the top. And the proportions of the window pane, upon which she makes her marks, are almost precisely those of the canvas itself, where the artist makes his. The style of painting is rapid, sketchy in places. The picture is not painted directly on canvas, but on paper mounted on canvas, enabling a fluid application of relatively thin and liquid paint on the smooth surface. The reddish-brown ground shows through in many places, giving a warm overall tone to the picture, increasing the sense of intimacy. Different brushstrokes are used to indicate the type of material being represented, swirling, broad and multi-directional strokes for the plaster on the walls, straighter and shorter strokes more regimented in direction to indicate the texture of the woman's woolen bodice, long, broad and wave-like strokes to represent the grain of the wooden table, long, thin streaks made with the point of a fine brush indicate light catching the folds of the skirt, while smoothly modulated tones built up with a complex structure of small brushstrokes convey the warmth, smoothness, and volume of the woman's arm as the light from the window falls upon her skin. The light catches points of detail, which in turn catch our eye. The tiny hook projecting from the inside of the window embrasure, and the streaks and drops of moisture on the inside of the glass, each with its individual shape and pattern of reflected light. The gleamingly metallic scissors resting on the rough-grained wood of the table, the embroidered decoration on the girl's hair covering, and the gleam of her braided blonde hair. Perhaps most daringly, the light caught by the spun thread of wool, painted in thin strokes as if the light itself is twisted into the fibres. Through the letters drawn on the glass can be glimpsed the green of the outside world, suggesting spring, the promise of the future, and new beginnings. On the wall at the girl's side hangs a picture, possibly an embroidery or panel of painted wood, decorated in traditional style, and showing prominently a heart, exemplifying what the scene shown in this unpretentious and engaging picture is all about. A young girl in love, taking a few minutes out of her daily tasks to daydream a little, just as you have taken a few minutes out of your day to watch this video. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope your daydreams, whether of love or other things, are sweet.